Hello and welcome to Sleepy Science Story. This is your time to slow down, to let the world outside soften at the edges and drift somewhere quieter for a while. Tonight, we're going to follow a tiny traveler from beyond our solar system, a visitor so small it could fit inside a pocket, yet old enough to remember the birth of stars. Its name is 3I Atlas, and it comes from another sun entirely. As it glides past our world, it carries whispers from a place we'll never see, fragments of another dawn, crossing the black between suns. Together, we'll follow its quiet path, tracing where it's been, what it's made of, and where it's going next. I hope this story isn't so interesting it keeps you awake, but if it does, at least your dreams will be full of stars and soft cosmic dust. A gentle like and a sleepy tap on subscribe would mean the world. When you look up at the night sky, it's easy to forget that almost everything you see belongs to one family. The stars that fill the darkness, the planets that circle them, the dust between them, they all orbit within their own neighborhoods. Yet every so often, something appears that does not belong. Something that drifts in from the deep dark between the stars, carrying the chill of interstellar space in its wake. 3I Atlas is one of those rare wanderers, a guest from another world quietly slipping through ours. It did not grow up here. It does not owe allegiance to our Sunday. It is just passing through, and in its soft arrival, it brings with it the story of somewhere else entirely. Imagine it now, floating alone for eons in the quiet between stars. There is no sunrise where it comes from, no dawns, no shadows cast by planets or moons. For millions of years, maybe billions, it drifted in the cold dark, wrapped in a layer of frozen silence. Out there, space is not empty. It hums with faint radiation, speckled dust, and scattered whispers of ancient starlight. Every grain of that dust tells of other suns, long-gone supernovas, and worlds that never were. Atlas was one of those fragments, born from the chaos of another solar system's youth. It may have once circled a distant star, one so far away that even its name, if it has one, has never reached us. Perhaps a collision threw it free, sending it tumbling out of orbit and into the endless night. Or maybe its parent star flared and died, releasing its children into the void to wander forever. Whatever the cause, it began its slow journey long before humans learned to look up and name the sky. There is something quietly beautiful about how it moves. It does not race or blaze like a comet in a movie. It glides. Its path through space is an arc of patience, an unhurried curve that will never close. When astronomers first spotted it, they noticed its motion was different, too fast to be bound by the sun's pull, too distant to be one of our own. Its orbit was not an ellipse like those of the planets, but a long open path that would take it close to the sun just once before sending it back out forever. The numbers told the story before the images did. A speed too high, an angle too steep, a direction no comet from our system could take. It was the third time in history that humanity had found an object from another star. If you could see it up close, it would not look dramatic. There would be no glowing green tail, no roaring jets of vapor. It would look like a lump of dark rock and frozen dust, small enough to hold in your hands if only you could survive the cold. Yet within that lump lies a library of ancient chemistry. The ices on its surface might contain molecules older than Earth itself, fragments of organic material shaped by a different kind of sunlight, the faint signature of a foreign star. Scientists believe these interstellar visitors are messengers of sorts, carrying samples from distant planetary nurseries. They are cosmic postcards from systems that formed, lived, and perhaps even died while ours was still new. Now, as 3I Atlas passes through our solar system, it is illuminated by a light that is not its own. The sun's warmth brushes its surface for the first time in unimaginable ages, coaxing small plumes of vapor from its skin. For a moment, it looks alive, glowing faintly with borrowed light. But even this brief encounter will not hold it long. The same gravity that bends its path will also release it, sending it back into the dark, out toward the next stretch of quiet eternity. It does not know we saw it. It will never know what it meant to us, that we gave it a name, measured its motion, and dreamed of the world it came from. Yet for the short time it was here, it reminded us of something profound. The universe is not made of separate stories. Every star, every dust grain, every drifting traveler is part of the same vast conversation, carried out across billions of years. As Atlas slips past our sun and begins its long farewell, it leaves behind no trace, no mark, no echo, only the memory that it came at all, that once something from beyond our world shared our sky. And somewhere in the dark, long after we are gone, it will still be gliding quietly between the stars, holding within it the faintest whisper of where it has been. The story of Three-Eye Atlas begins long before our own sun was even a spark in the galaxy's dust. Somewhere far away, in a region of space that now exists only as a memory, a cloud of gas and ice began to gather under its own weight. It may have been a small star, a quiet one, glowing faintly red and surrounded by a spinning disk of debris. Within that disk, grains of dust collided, stuck together, and slowly grew into pebbles, then stones, then larger clumps of matter. Out of that gentle chaos, worlds began to take shape, each one a promise of something more. Around one of those worlds, or perhaps between them, a collision might have changed everything, a strike so slow that it felt like a sigh on a cosmic scale, yet powerful enough to send fragments tumbling free into the dark. One of those fragments was Three-Eye Atlas, torn from its birthplace and set adrift into the silent sea between the stars. Once released, it entered a place where time loses its meaning. The space between suns is vast beyond imagination, a cold emptiness stretching for light years in every direction. Out there, the temperature sinks close to absolute zero, where even atoms barely move, yet Atlas endured. Its frozen surface preserved every mark and every molecule from the world that shaped it. Radiation from distant stars slowly altered its skin, darkening it, hardening it, until it became a relic wrapped in its own armor of cosmic dust. Over millions of years, it may have passed through regions of interstellar gas, brushed by invisible streams of charged particles, or wandered through the faint haze of ancient supernovae. Each encounter would have added a new layer to its history, a microscopic record of time that no human eye could ever fully read. Sometimes, as it drifted, the faint light of distant stars would have crossed its path. Their warmth was too weak to melt it, but enough to cast a shadow across its uneven surface. In that soft illumination, it would have looked like a small, dark comet quietly crossing the space between everything. It may have brushed past other stars in its wandering, tugged gently by their gravity, altering its course ever so slightly. Each star it passed would have sent it on a new path, a slow cosmic pinball drifting endlessly from one invisible hand to the next. And then, by chance alone, one day its path began to bend toward our Sunday. For a long time, it was unseen. The distance between stars is so immense that even when Atlas was still years away, it would have appeared no brighter than a mote of dust. Only when it came close enough for sunlight to touch it did it begin to reveal itself. From Earth, the telescopes that scanned the skies were not searching for it. They were mapping the ordinary asteroids, comets, the faint background of the night. Yet among those familiar points of light, a new speck appeared, one that shifted position in a way no ordinary object should. Its motion was steady but strange, its path cutting across the plane of the planets at a steep, foreign angle. The astronomers who first saw it must have felt that quiet thrill, the soft astonishment that comes from realizing something truly alien has entered our sky. As calculations poured in, the truth became clear. This was not a visitor from the outer edges of the solar system. Its speed was far too high for that. Even at its slowest, it was moving faster than the sun could ever pull back. It came from somewhere beyond, perhaps another star entirely. To travel such a distance, it would have needed millions of years, gliding through the void at tens of kilometers per second, never resting, never stopping. And now, by coincidence and gravity's subtle hand, it had crossed paths with us. When the news spread, it was met with quiet wonder. Another interstellar traveler, the third ever found, drifting through our celestial neighborhood for only a brief moment before continuing on its way. It did not come to visit. It did not seek attention. It simply moved as it always had, obeying the oldest laws in the universe. And yet, in its passing, it reminded us of something ancient and beautiful. That the stars are not separate islands, and the spaces between them are not empty. They are filled with travelers like Atlas, tiny seeds cast from distant worlds, carrying the history of their creation across the galaxy. Every one of them is a story waiting to be seen, and for a little while, this one passed close enough for us to notice. Now, as it slips farther from the sun, the faint light that revealed it begins to fade again. Soon it will return to invisibility, blending back into the dark from which it came. It will continue its patient voyage, untouched and unchanged, while our world spins on, unaware of how rare and delicate its brief appearance truly was. Somewhere, perhaps far away, another civilization may one day see it gliding past their star and wonder, just as we did, where such a quiet traveler was born. When sunlight first touched 3i Atlas, it was like waking a ghost. For millions of years, it had drifted through perfect darkness, its frozen surface untouched by warmth or shadow. Then, from a distance too vast to comprehend, a faint glow began to grow. The sun, a star like so many others it had passed, began to reach across the black. At first, that light was little more than a whisper, a soft glimmer that brushed its crust. Slowly, the icy layers began to respond. A molecule here, a crystal there, stirred and loosened. Tiny pockets of gas trapped within the rock began to push their way free, carrying with them a mist of ancient dust. What was once invisible now became faintly visible. It was the beginning of a brief moment of life for a body that had not known change in ages. From Earth, the faint tail that followed Atlas looked almost delicate, a thin silver thread glowing in the dark. It was not dramatic or bright like the great comets that sweep across our skies, but rather a soft shimmer, like smoke rising from a candle's wick. This was sunlight's quiet greeting, a gentle reminder that even the coldest traveler cannot resist warmth forever. As the object moved closer to the sun, the tail lengthened slightly, bending with the solar wind, a constant invisible stream that blows outward from our star. Each grain of dust released from its surface caught that wind and began its own smaller journey, spreading across millions of kilometers before vanishing once more into the dark. The changes happening on the surface of Atlas were simple yet profound. When ice meets heat, it breathes. Beneath the thin crust, frozen gases began to sublimate, changing directly from solid to vapor. It was a slow process, but in space, even the slowest change feels momentous. Each bubble of gas carried a memory of the world that birthed it. Perhaps it contained traces of carbon monoxide, methane, or ammonia, the same ingredients that once floated in the nursery clouds of distant suns. Scientists observing it from afar watched carefully, measuring the way its light flickered and shifted. Those tiny changes told them what kinds of ices were hidden inside, what kind of chemistry had taken place in that faraway system long ago. In a way, Atlas was speaking to us not in words, but in wavelengths and reflections, in the faint glimmer of elements that matched or differed from our own. There was a serenity in its motion. The sun's gravity curved its path gently, bending it into a graceful arc that took it past the inner worlds before sending it back toward the outer dark. For a few months, it shared our sky, crossing constellations at a pace too slow to see with the naked eye. Night after night, telescopes caught its faint trail. The astronomers who tracked it did so almost tenderly, as though following a bird migrating across the endless sea. They knew it would not stay long. Each night's data brought it a little closer to its departure, and with each new image, it became a little dimmer. During that time, the world below continued as it always does, People went about their evenings unaware that a visitor from another star was gliding above them. Children slept beneath its passing. Cities glowed beneath its path, lights flickering like constellations reflected on the ground. Few would ever see it, and fewer still would remember its name. But that is the nature of such visitors. They do not come to stay or to be known. They come to remind us, if we notice, that the universe is not confined to our corner of it. As Atlas neared its closest approach to the sun, it briefly shone a little brighter. Not because it wanted to, but because sunlight and ice always create a moment of wonder when they meet. The gases escaping its surface expanded into a thin halo, scattering light like a mist caught in dawn. For a heartbeat of cosmic time, it was beautiful, a fragile bloom in the emptiness of space. And then, just as gently, it began to fade. The warmth that had awakened it now began to push it away. Its velocity, faster than any planet's, carried it onward, away from the sun's hold, back toward the dim reaches where no warmth could follow. Soon the glow vanished. Its tail thinned until it could no longer be seen, and its surface froze again under the weightless silence. The small burst of life was over, and the long drift resumed. Yet for those who had watched, something had changed. They had seen proof that even in the quiet, even in the spaces between stars, there are stories still unfolding, slow, patient, and impossibly vast. 3i Atlas did not stay long enough to leave a mark. But for a moment, it had bridged the space between two suns, carrying with it the faint breath of another world. And as it moved away once more, shrinking into invisibility, it left behind the soft echo of that meeting. Light touching ice, warmth touching silence, the universe remembering itself through the motion of a single wandering stone. Long after 3i Atlas passed its brief moment in sunlight, it continued its slow arc away from our star, carrying the faint warmth it had borrowed like a secret. From the perspective of the Earth, its light grew weaker each night until it could no longer be seen even by the most patient telescopes. But invisibility does not mean absence. It was still there, moving with a steady grace through the outskirts of the solar system, gliding past the distant orbits of Neptune and Pluto, leaving behind the last reach of sunlight's golden touch. Beyond that point, the glow of the sun fades to a pinprick, and the world returns to the quiet darkness that has been its home for eons. At those distances, the warmth that awakens life on Earth has no power. The temperature falls so low that even light itself feels fragile. Space becomes a place of quiet balance where nothing rushes and nothing resists. In that frozen calm, Atlas continued its journey. The last traces of vapor that had once escaped from its surface crystallized and settled back onto its crust, forming a new layer of frost over the ancient ones. It was as if the traveler was being tucked back into its long slumber, sealed again by the cold. Its small outburst of life had ended, and the silence of interstellar space was calling it home. There is something soothing in imagining that. Somewhere out there, beyond the edges of our planetary family, a tiny body drifts without destination or hurry. Its orbit, though calculated in perfect detail by scientists, is more poetry than math. It will never return. The sun's gravity has no hold on it now. Instead, it will continue outward, slipping gently into the deep dark between the stars. From time to time, it will pass through regions of dust left behind by other comets, through the ghostly trails of older travelers like itself. Occasionally, a distant star might tug faintly on its path, not enough to capture it, only enough to change its direction slightly, like a breath altering the fall of a feather. The galaxy is full of such wanderers. Thousands, perhaps millions, of tiny worlds like Atlas drift unseen, carrying the signatures of the stars that made them. Some were born in systems that no longer exist. Others escaped during the chaotic early years of their star's formation. Each of them travels alone, a quiet witness to the story of its origin. If you could gather them all, you might trace a map of the Milky Way's history written in stone and ice. But the universe does not gather. it scatters. And so they drift, like seeds on a cosmic wind, waiting for a moment of light to reveal them before they vanish again. Scientists believe that Atlas's journey will continue for billions of years. It will wander through regions of space where no sunlight reaches, through the thin clouds of hydrogen that fill the galactic void. It may one day pass close to another star, far from now, perhaps in a time when our sun has grown dim and the Earth is no longer blue. That other star will pull at it gently, maybe bending its path again, perhaps even capturing it for a while, the way our sun almost did. If that happens, Atlas will awaken once more, its frozen crust breathing out faint jets of vapor under an unfamiliar light. Somewhere, beings around that distant star might look up and notice it, just as we did, and wonder where it came from. There is comfort in knowing that such continuity exists. Every time an interstellar visitor like Atlas passes through a solar system, it becomes part of that system's story. For a few brief weeks, it shares its light, gives a glimpse of something older and larger than ourselves, and then moves on. It carries our curiosity with it, mixed invisibly into the dust that sunlight touched. In that way, we too become travelers for a moment, part of the endless motion that binds all things together. Now, as 3I Atlas fades completely from reach, it enters a kind of eternal twilight. The faint starlight that brushes its surface will never be enough to change it again. It will drift on in perfect stillness, unhurried and untouched, until time itself begins to lose meaning. Every speck of dust clinging to it, every frozen molecule, will remain as it was when the universe was young. The stars it passes will change, the galaxy will turn, but the traveler will continue, small and steady, forever moving toward nowhere in particular. It is a quiet thought, but also a peaceful one. To drift endlessly through space without destination or decay is not an ending. It is a kind of rest, an infinite calm in which even the cold feels gentle. And somewhere within that stillness, 3I Atlas continues its soft, unending journey, a single whisper in the vast sleep of the cosmos. Far beyond the edges of our solar system, where the warmth of the sun is no stronger than a memory, 3I Atlas now drifts in a darkness so deep it almost feels alive. The space it moves through is quiet, but not empty. Invisible fields hum softly, cosmic rays flicker like distant fireflies, and the faint glow of the Milky Way stretches like a pale river above an endless sea. Atlas glides within this stillness, moving so steadily that even time seems to hesitate around it. No light shines on its surface now, and no warmth touches its frozen crust. It is as silent as stone and as old as memory, a tiny relic gliding through the night between stars. If you could stand beside it, there would be no sound, no breeze, not even the faintest echo of motion. Only the faint shimmer of distant starlight would reveal its presence, glinting off pockets of ice that still cling to its surface. The rest would be darkness, soft and complete. In that darkness, 3I Atlas continues to carry the history of another world, a frozen record of a place that once circled a different Sunday. Every atom within it holds the story of its creation, a pattern of minerals and molecules written by a chemistry that once belonged to a distant system. Perhaps it formed in the outer disk of its original star, where frozen dust gathered into clumps and spiraled inward. Perhaps it was part of a larger body, torn free by collision or gravity, exiled into the open void. Whatever its beginning, it became something rare and pure, a traveler untied to any star. As it moves deeper into the interstellar dark, it will pass through regions of faint, whispering gas left over from ancient explosions. Every few million years, a grain of dust will strike it, each impact a tiny tap that leaves no mark. Occasionally, it will cross through the thin blue edge of a nebula, a cloud of glowing hydrogen and helium stretched light years wide. For a moment, its icy body will shine faintly as the nebula's light scatters across it. Then it will emerge once more into the great black between, its solitude undisturbed. It may wander for ages before coming close to another star, perhaps in another spiral arm of the galaxy entirely. When that time comes, its surface will stir again, and sunlight from that distant star will carve a brief shimmer into its frost, revealing it to another world that might look up and wonder what kind of visitor has come their way. There is a strange comfort in thinking about that. Atlas is so small and distant that no eye will ever see it again, yet its existence continues, patient and certain. It carries the same atoms that once belonged to a sun, a planet, a cloud of gas atoms that have now crossed the gulf between stars. In its quiet motion, there is a kind of peace that feels eternal. It is proof that nothing truly stops, that even after billions of years, matter keeps moving, reshaping, rejoining, and rediscovering itself across time. And perhaps, in its own way, Atlas reminds us of our place within that story. We too are travelers, bound for a time to our own small world, orbiting a single star. But like Atlas, we are made of remnants from other suns, fragments of stardust that once burned and fell and drifted before gathering again to form something new. We are the universe remembering itself, taking shape for a little while before continuing on. One day, long after our time has passed, Atlas will still be moving. It will carry on through the endless night, following no path but its own. The galaxy will continue to turn around it. Stars will flare and fade, and still it will drift, untouched and unchanged. If it ever finds another sun, perhaps it will bloom again for a moment, releasing a wisp of vapor to mark its passage. But if not, it will remain as it is now, serene and unbothered, wrapped in the same calm that fills the spaces between all things. To imagine it is to imagine peace itself. No sound, no rush, no need for destination, only the quiet persistence of movement, a journey that has no end and no hurry. 3i Atlas continues onward through the galaxy, a single frozen thought adrift in eternity, carrying the faint echo of light from every star it has ever passed. It is the embodiment of stillness in motion, the universe's way of whispering that everything, even the smallest stone, has a story that never truly ends. And perhaps, somewhere within the hush of that infinite distance, it dreams not of where it came from, nor of where it goes, but simply of the joy of drifting forever beneath a sky that never sleeps. When we think of travel, we imagine motion with a beginning and an end. Yet 3i Atlas drifts through a kind of travel that knows neither. Its path is not a line from here to there, but a soft curve through forever. Long after it slipped past the reach of our sun's gravity, it entered a realm where stars are few and far between, where distances are measured not in miles or even light years but in silence itself. It moves through that silence as if floating within a dream. The darkness around it is not empty but alive with faint currents of invisible energy, tiny ripples that move through the galaxy like waves across a cosmic sea. These waves brush past Atlas, gentle and unending, nudging it ever so slightly as it sails onward. If we could follow it, our journey would be slow beyond comprehension. There would be no sound, no light strong enough to cast a shadow. The sun would fade behind us until it was no brighter than any other star, and even that small glimmer would eventually vanish. Ahead would stretch the deep interstellar medium, an ocean of hydrogen atoms scattered so thinly that you could travel 100 miles without touching one. In that stillness, 3i Atlas glides as if weightless, neither hurried nor hindered. It does not need fuel or direction. Its inertia alone carries it forward, a relic of an ancient push from a world long forgotten. Every so often, it might cross the faint tail of another wanderer, the microscopic dust of another comet's passage. When that happens, a few grains may cling to its icy skin or bounce away into the dark. These encounters are brief and silent, like greetings exchanged between travelers who will never meet again. In the grand scale of time, they mean little, but in the language of the cosmos, even the smallest touch has weight. It is through such exchanges that the galaxy keeps its memory, passing traces of one world to another, grain by grain, atom by atom. Scientists often describe interstellar space as empty, but the word does not do it justice. It is a place of immense quiet, but also immense continuity. Every particle drifting through it is connected to something that came before. The same hydrogen atoms that surround Atlas now may once have flowed through the heart of a star, glowing fiercely before being released back into the void. The dust that glimmers faintly ahead of it may contain remnants of planets that existed before the Earth was born. As Atlas passes through these ancient remnants, it becomes part of that ongoing exchange. Its frozen surface collects a new layer of history, just as it carries the old. It is strange to think that such a small object can move through so much and still remain itself. It does not crumble, it does not burn, it simply continues. Its patience is absolute. A human lifetime would not even register as an instant along its journey. Civilizations could rise and fall, galaxies could shift their shapes, and still Atlas would be gliding, steady and untroubled, through the dark. To watch it would be to watch eternity in motion, slow enough to feel timeless. Perhaps this is what the universe teaches through such travelers. Motion does not always mean change. Some things move simply because movement is their nature. 3. Atlas does not seek, it does not flee, it does not wonder where it goes. It simply exists in the act of going. The peace of that thought is almost human in its quietness. To drift freely, with no beginning to return to, and no destination to reach, is a kind of perfection. Somewhere, far ahead, the faint pull of another star waits. It might take millions of years before Atlas feels its presence, but when it does, its path will bend again, just slightly, toward a new light. The pattern will repeat. It will pass near, awaken briefly, and then move on once more. In this endless cycle of motion, it becomes the link between stars, carrying the dust of one system into another, spreading the elements of creation across the galaxy without even knowing it. There is a kind of poetry in that. We often imagine the universe as vast and cold, but in truth, it is full of connection. The same atoms that burn in distant suns move quietly through objects like Atlas, waiting to be kindled again. In its silent voyage, the little traveler plays its part in the slow, unbroken rhythm of the cosmos. It is a rhythm too large to hear, but it continues all the same, deep and steady, echoing through the spaces between the stars. 3. Atlas will keep moving, untouched and undeterred, until long after our own world is gone. Its path will outlast our histories, our languages, our memories. Yet, in a small way, it will carry us with it, for we saw it, named it, and wondered. And that act of wonder, brief, fragile, human, will forever be a part of its story, carried quietly across the galaxy by a traveler that never stops. If you could watch 3 Atlas from far above, you would see nothing more than a speck of shadow slipping across an ocean of faint light. Yet within that stillness, there is motion of the most graceful kind. It turns ever so slightly as it drifts, rotating on an invisible axis like a leaf carried by a current too slow to see. The sunlight that once brushed its surface has long since faded, but its momentum remains, unbroken and calm. It spins through the dark with the same rhythm it has kept for ages, a rhythm set in motion by a force long forgotten. Every turn is a quiet echo of its birth, a slow dance that began when it was first cast into the galaxy and has never truly stopped. The darkness surrounding it is not absolute. Stars stretch across the void in every direction, so distant that they look like scattered dust on velvet. Each one burns with a slightly different hue, and together they create a soft mosaic of color so faint that it would take eyes far more sensitive than ours to see. The Milky Way itself forms a pale river in the distance, its light bent and blurred by clouds of ancient gas. It is in this vast, delicate scenery that Atlas moves, a single traveler gliding through a corridor of time and silence. There is no sound here, yet the silence is not empty. It feels thick and alive, like the pause between breaths. Over unimaginable stretches of time, that silence will shift. The stars themselves are not fixed. They, too, drift through the galaxy, pulled by the same slow tide that carries everything. Eventually, Atlas will find itself in a different sky entirely, one where the constellations have changed, and the map of the heavens has been rewritten by time. The stars it passes will never know of its existence, but their light will touch it all the same. For a brief moment, each one will cast its glow across the traveler's surface, and then fade again as distance grows. In that way, Atlas will carry the touch of countless suns, each leaving a trace so faint it can never be seen but never completely forgotten. Its rotation keeps it balanced, its motion steady. There are no sudden jolts, no friction, no resistance. The interstellar medium it moves through is too thin to slow it. It is surrounded by hydrogen atoms drifting far apart, each separated by miles of emptiness. Yet those atoms are enough to whisper against its surface, exchanging the smallest bits of energy, polishing its outer layer one particle at a time. These are the slowest changes imaginable, the sort that take millions of years to make a difference. But time is patient, and so is the traveler. It accepts everything, the dust, the light, the quiet, as part of its journey. There is a humility to such motion. It is not driven by purpose or urgency. It simply continues because continuation is all it knows. To us, its journey seems endless, but to the universe, it is one small thread in a tapestry that stretches beyond measure. Atlas is not lost, for there is nowhere in the cosmos that is truly lost. Every place, every direction, connects to something else. Every movement finds its balance. Perhaps that is what makes it so peaceful to imagine a traveler that never hurries and never stops, moving not toward a destination but through the act of existing. If we could see through its eyes, we might find that the universe feels smaller from out there. The stars would seem closer, the spaces between them less intimidating. There would be no horizon, no edge, no up or down, only gentle motion through a field of light. In that endless drift, time itself would soften. The days and nights that define our world would blur into a single, eternal twilight. Nothing would age in the way we understand it. Change would come, but only in the quiet way frost forms on glass or waves smooth the stones on a beach. 3i Atlas carries this serenity with it, even as it moves farther from the sun and into regions where no human light will ever reach. It is a reminder that peace does not always mean stillness. Sometimes it means motion so steady, so patient, that it feels like rest. Somewhere ahead, another star waits to brush its surface with light, but until then, it will continue through the silence, spinning softly, wrapped in the hush of creation. The stars will keep their distance, and the traveler will keep its path, both moving to a rhythm older than memory, a rhythm that never ends. There is a strange kind of beauty in the idea that something as small as 3i Atlas could travel forever through space without ever belonging anywhere. It is a visitor that never stops visiting, a wanderer that never finds a home. Yet, perhaps that is what gives it meaning. Its very existence is proof that the universe is not divided into separate places but is one great field of motion and connection. From the faintest grain of dust to the brightest star, everything drifts together, each in its own time. Atlas is simply the quiet reminder of that truth, a single thread of continuity between countless suns. As it moves farther away from our solar system, its path grows more solitary. The sun's light, once enough to wake its frozen surface, now fades into a mere glimmer behind it. The planets that once orbited brightly in its distant view have long since vanished, swallowed by the dark. Even the gravitational pull of our star weakens until it can no longer feel its tug. The silence that surrounds it is complete again, the same silence it carried before it came to us. But within that silence, there is a kind of companionship, for space itself is never empty. Every photon that passes near it, every atom that drifts by, shares in its journey for a brief moment before moving on. Atlas is not alone because nothing in the universe truly is. The space between stars is filled with invisible light, faint radio waves, and the endless hum of background radiation left over from the birth of everything. These subtle murmurs fill the void with a soft and constant song, one too quiet for human ears but unceasing all the same. It moves through that soundless music as though gliding on a tide, never aware of how perfectly it fits within the melody of the cosmos. Every rotation, Every centimeter of its drift adds to that harmony, a motion so gentle and ancient that it feels almost sacred. It is easy to imagine that somewhere deep within its layers of ice and rock, it remembers the warmth of its original Sunday. Perhaps that memory is not one of light or heat, but of gravity, the pull that once held it close before letting it go. Gravity is the universe's most patient teacher. It binds and releases, draws together, and then allows freedom. Atlas has carried that lesson across unimaginable distances, moving without resistance yet still shaped by every encounter. The stars that it passes will all leave their faint mark, not enough to change its essence, but enough to guide its course just slightly, as if each one were offering a whisper of direction. One day, though it may be millions of years from now, 3I Atlas will come close enough to another star for its frozen surface to feel the touch of light again. A faint warmth will creep across its crust, awakening gases that have slept for eons. It will form a small tail once more, not bright, just visible enough to shimmer in that alien starlight. For a few months, or maybe years, it will glow faintly, a momentary spark of life in another sky. Perhaps by then another civilization will have arisen, one with telescopes and curiosity like ours. They may look up and see it as we once did, wondering where it came from and where it will go next. In that way, the traveler will have connected two worlds that never knew of each other, binding them across the gulf of time and distance through the quiet act of passing by. Even if no one sees it, the act itself will still matter. The universe has a way of giving purpose to motion. Every journey, no matter how small, reshapes the pattern of space ever so slightly. Atlas, in its infinite patience, is part of that shaping. It has become an artist of emptiness, drawing invisible lines between stars, mapping routes that no eye will ever follow. Its legacy is not in being seen, but in existing so perfectly within the fabric of motion that everything around it feels a little more complete. And so it continues, not with urgency, not with destination, but with grace. The darkness that surrounds it is not a void, but a cradle, vast and gentle. The stars ahead wait in silence, their light stretched thin across time, ready to greet the traveler when it finally arrives. Until then, 3I Atlas glides on, a small memory of light and dust, carrying with it the essence of countless worlds. It is neither lost nor found. It simply is. And perhaps, in that quiet certainty, it mirrors the universe itself, forever moving, forever changing, forever at peace. If you could somehow drift beside 3I Atlas now, far beyond the outermost whisper of our solar system, the first thing you would notice is how silent everything feels. The space around it is so vast that direction loses meaning, and time itself seems to stretch and slow. You would see it turning, not quickly but with the patience of ages, its surface covered in the muted shimmer of ancient frost. The ice would catch what little light remains from distant stars, scattering it like powder. It would look neither bright nor dark, only soft, as if wrapped in a thin veil of sleep. There would be no sound of motion, no hum of engines, only the deep hush of a body moving through eternity with the grace of something that has forgotten hurry. Its shape would seem uneven, sculpted by the faint sculpting touch of radiation and dust over endless millennia. Parts of it might appear jagged, while other regions would be smooth, polished by time and frozen winds that no longer blow. This surface tells a story older than any planet's crust, a record of collisions and passages through light and shadow. Each grain of dust that once touched it has left behind a trace too small to measure but too permanent to erase. It is, in its quiet way, a time capsule of the galaxy, carrying within it the chemistry of distant stars and forgotten worlds. If you placed your hand upon it, though of course you could not, the cold would not just sting, it would feel infinite. It would seem to reach through your fingers and into your bones, as if the object itself were made of time. This cold is not the cold of winter or ice, but the cold of emptiness, the absence of warmth for millions of years. Yet, in that cold, there is still life of a different kind, the life of motion, of being, of endurance. The fact that it continues, unchanged and unbroken, is its quiet form of living. Looking outward from its lonely position, the stars would appear brighter than from Earth. The lack of atmosphere would make them sharp and unblinking. They would fill the sky in every direction, millions of them, each a different color and distance, each surrounded by invisible systems of their own. Somewhere among those faint points would be the sun, now just another star, indistinguishable to any casual glance. That tiny dot of light once gave Atlas its only moment of warmth, its brief shimmering tail, and then let it go. From where it now drifts, our entire world, our oceans, our clouds, our cities exists as a single glint of reflected light, smaller than a thought. And yet, in that glint, lies the proof that everything is connected. For even though Atlas is gone from our sight, it has been touched by our sun and by us, through the simple act of being seen. When telescopes first found it, when astronomers traced its path and whispered its name, humanity and this wanderer became briefly intertwined. For that short time, its path crossed our story, and we became part of its endless journey. That connection will never fade completely. The photons that once reflected off its surface and traveled toward Earth now continue outward, carrying the memory of that meeting into the infinite dark. Somewhere, millions of years from now, those same rays of light will pass through another part of space, unnoticed but still existing, still marking the moment when one small planet looked up and saw a visitor from the stars. It is comforting, in a way, to imagine that link so fragile, so brief, and yet so enduring. 3. Atlas is not aware of it. It knows nothing of names or observation or wonder. It simply moves, guided by the same forces that shape every world and every atom. But through our awareness of it, we give it meaning. We become its witness, and in witnessing, we remind ourselves of how small and yet how deeply connected everything truly is. Now, as it continues its slow drift into the unseen, its story becomes less about where it came from or where it goes, and more about the quiet persistence of being. It will travel on long after the last traces of our civilization fade, carrying with it that faint dusting of sunlight from our encounter. Perhaps, in another age, light from a distant star will strike its surface and scatter across another world, and someone else will notice. They will see what we saw, a small, patient traveler passing through, and they will wonder as we did. And in that wonder, the story of 3 Atlas will begin again. Far from home, where the stars begin to thin and even the galaxy itself becomes a pale ribbon across the black 3 Atlas continues its quiet journey. There is no more trace of the sun's warmth on its surface now, no shimmer of vapor, no whisper of light, only the slow, steady drift of something that has learned the rhythm of eternity. From a distance, it would appear as a speck no brighter than a grain of dust, moving at a pace so even that it seems frozen, yet every moment carries it farther away from us, deeper into the quiet gulf between the stars. The space it travels through now is older than memory. It is filled with the faint remnants of what once was the soft glow of cosmic dust, the low hum of background radiation that has been expanding since the birth of the universe. These are the echoes of everything that ever happened, stretched thin by distance and time until they sound more like silence than sound. Atlas moves through this ancient ocean as if floating on the surface of an invisible tide. The light from distant stars glances off it and fades again, giving it brief flashes of color that no eye will ever see. It is a dance between light and shadow played out across a distance so vast it defies comprehension. Its course is steady, but the galaxy itself is not. Stars shift and wander, spiral arms slowly twist, and gravity from unseen giants bends the fabric of space in quiet, invisible ways. Atlas is part of that motion, carried by it without resistance. Its path curves subtly through the galaxy's great wheel, responding to the pull of everything around it even as it moves toward nothing in particular. It is both solitary and connected, alone yet never apart from the forces that shape the stars and planets. To exist in that way is to belong everywhere and nowhere at once. Back on Earth, the record of its passage remains, etched into data and memory, The coordinates of its orbit, the brightness of its tail, the soft curve of its departure, all written down by those who watched. Long after the telescopes have turned elsewhere, that record endures, a small proof that once something from another star crossed our sky. It may never pass this way again, yet its presence changed us. For those who looked up, it offered a rare reminder that our solar system is not isolated, that even in the vastness of space, there are visitors who share in the grand drift of the cosmos. It was as if the universe had leaned close for a moment, offering a glimpse of its endlessness. As it continues onward, Atlas will encounter nothing that can stop it. The airless dark offers no resistance, and the cold preserves it perfectly. Even collisions are rare out here. Centuries may pass between its meetings with single grains of dust, and those encounters will do little more than polish its frozen surface. The years will stretch into ages, and still it will glide on, untouched by decay. In that endless stillness, it becomes a kind of monument not to creation or destruction, but to endurance itself. Eventually, perhaps after millions of years, it will drift near another system. A faint warmth will reach across the dark, and once more, a few molecules on its surface will stir. A trace of vapor might rise, a shimmer of ice might catch the light. It will awaken briefly, not because it wishes to, but because the universe will ask it to again. And just as before, it will move on, carrying the light of another sun for a moment before slipping away once more. If anyone were to see it then, they would see what we saw, a small, dim traveler crossing the sky like a thought passing through a dream. They might give it a name, measure its path, and wonder what distant place it came from. And so its story will continue, not through its own will, but through the eyes that find it. That is the quiet grace of such a traveler. It asks for nothing, but in passing, it reminds each world it visits that the stars are not boundaries but bridges. The universe is not a collection of separate places, but a single, unending sea, and 3i Atlas is one of its ripples, moving softly outward forever. When 3i Atlas was first confirmed as an interstellar visitor, the realization spread through observatories like a gentle wave of disbelief. Astronomers are not often surprised by rocks in the sky. They chart them, calculate their orbits, predict their paths, and send those predictions neatly into databases where the numbers behave as they should. But the moment Atlas appeared, the numbers did not behave. They curved in ways that defied belonging. The trajectory it traced across the dark was not the looping ellipse of something born of our sun, but an open arc, a path of farewell. It was the kind of movement that whispered, "This one is only passing through." In that quiet understanding, a kind of reverence took hold. Not the loud kind, but a hushed awe that fills a room when something larger than comprehension enters it. People working night shifts at observatories found themselves stepping outside to look up, even though they knew the object was too faint to see with their eyes. Still, it felt right to look. There is something ancient in that gesture, a human impulse that predates language, the instinct to raise one's head toward the unknown and feel small beneath it. Atlas became a part of that instinct for a time. The telescopes followed it faithfully. Night after night, they traced its progress across the stars, recording the faintest glimmers of reflected sunlight. Each image came back as a speck of light surrounded by endless black. Yet that single speck carried a universe of questions. What star had it come from? What had its home been like? Did it once pass by planets, moons, or rings, or was it flung into the dark before any worlds had formed at all? These questions were not asked with urgency. They were whispered softly, as one might whisper to the sea, knowing the waves will not answer but speaking anyway. The data was gathered and shared, and across the world, people who had never met studied the same small visitor from different corners of the earth. In that quiet collaboration, there was something deeply comforting. Science is often seen as the pursuit of answers, yet moments like these remind us it is also the practice of wonder. To measure something so fleeting is to say, "We noticed." To write its name, 3i Atlas, is to give a piece of the infinite a place in our own story. The number and letters may seem cold, but behind them lies warmth, the warmth of minds that turn toward mystery together. There is a strange tenderness in realizing that even in the vast indifference of space, the simple act of paying attention creates meaning. 3i Atlas did not need to be seen to exist, but by seeing it, we became connected to it. Our awareness bridged the impossible gulf of distance, if only in thought. When astronomers confirmed that it would never return, a small melancholy followed, not because we had lost something, but because we had glimpsed how brief even cosmic meetings can be. To watch an interstellar object is to understand impermanence on a grand scale. It reminds us that everything moves, and nothing stays forever. As the news reached beyond scientific circles, others began to wonder too. Artists painted what they imagined it might look like. Writers described it as a traveler, a messenger, a ghost from another Sunday. Children pointed at stars and asked which one it came from. In this way, the story of 3i Atlas grew beyond equations and into feeling. It became a quiet poem written across the sky for anyone who happened to look up that night. Eventually, it slipped out of range. The telescopes followed as far as they could until the faint light disappeared, swallowed by the background of space. The datasets closed, the observations ended, but the idea of it lingered. It was gone, yet it left behind a calm awareness of how open our universe truly is. Somewhere out there, unseen, it still moves, and perhaps that is enough. The beauty of its passing was not in how long we could observe it, but in the reminder that even across the endless distance between stars, something can still arrive unexpectedly, cross our sky, and continue on. For those who watched, the memory remains. They may never see it again, but they will always know that once, a small traveler from another world passed through ours. It needed no announcement, no meaning, and yet it left behind both. And now, every time astronomers look into the night and find another faint, moving light, a part of them will wonder if it, too, has come from somewhere far away, carrying the quiet story of another sky. The numbers that described 3i Atlas were simple, but they carried a kind of poetry. They traced a curve through the solar system that was not a loop but an open hand letting go. Every digit, every calculation spoke of motion that would never circle back, of a traveler moving too fast for capture. To plot its course was to watch a goodbye written in mathematics. Astronomers followed its path through equations first, and only later through the faint glimmer of light that matched them. The data told the story of escape. It was moving at a speed that no planet could hold, drawn briefly toward the sun and then released into eternity. There was no force strong enough to bring it back. Its orbit was not bound to any star, not even to the one whose light had briefly woken it. In those numbers lay a strange peace. Most orbits are prisons, even the beautiful ones. Planets circle their stars endlessly, pulled back by invisible tethers. Comets swing in and out, only to return again centuries later, repeating the same frozen dance. But 3i Atlas was free. Its journey was not repetition but release. It was the embodiment of motion unending, the kind of movement that belongs to the universe itself rather than to any one world. That freedom, once recognized, changed the way the scientists spoke about it. They stopped calling it an intruder or an object. They began calling it a visitor. The difference was subtle but full of meaning. Visitors come and go by choice. They do not invade. They pass through quietly, leaving only a trace of their presence behind. Each new observation refined its trajectory, narrowing the shape of its path until the story became clear. It had entered our solar system from a direction near the constellation Hercules, gliding in at a steep angle that no comet native to the sun could take. It had crossed inside the orbit of Earth, brushed faintly past the warmth of Mercury, and then curved outward again. It had come not to stay but to greet, if greeting is something a fragment of rock and ice can do. Now, as it left, it carried away sunlight and the faint touch of our awareness, two things it would never know, but that had become part of its story nonetheless. The farewell was not dramatic. There was no burst of color or sound, only the gradual dimming of its light as it moved farther away. The last images captured by telescopes showed a speck fading into the background, a final dot that merged seamlessly with the field of stars. Its speed, though constant, felt unhurried. Distance in space works that way. What moves faster than anything on Earth can still seem almost still when the canvas is infinite. The farther it went, the more timeless it became. For those who had followed it from its discovery, there was an ache in watching it go. They had measured it, named it, and learned its secrets, and yet it had never belonged to them. That is the nature of cosmic things. They arrive without warning, they teach us briefly, and then they continue their own stories beyond the reach of our instruments. Even so, knowing where it was going offered a sense of closure. The mathematics did not just define its path, they gave it direction. Through them, humans could see farther than their eyes ever could, projecting its motion across the void until it disappeared into a map of possibility. Beyond those numbers, imagination filled the rest. Somewhere ahead lay a stretch of interstellar space untouched by sunlight, a region where dust glows faintly with the energy of forgotten stars. Atlas would move through that region as effortlessly as a leaf drifting on a still pond. Its journey would take it through the unseen architecture of the galaxy, through the gravitational whispers of passing stars, perhaps even near the edges of another solar system one day. It would continue its long exhale of motion, unbroken, unending. The thought of it brings a kind of quiet comfort. In its leaving, it teaches the same lesson as its arrival, that nothing truly stops. The universe itself is a story written in departures. Every orbit, every particle of light, every atom of dust is moving somewhere, carrying traces of what it once touched. 3i Atlas is now one more part of that endless flow. To follow its numbers is to glimpse the shape of forever, and to realize that even in the vast stillness of space, there is never an end, only continuation. When 3i Atlas passed near the sun, it entered a kind of golden silence. For the first time in perhaps millions of years, warmth touched its frozen crust. The sunlight that reached it had traveled for 8 minutes across space, but for the traveler itself, it was the first true light it had felt in an age beyond measure. The encounter was brief, but it awakened the surface like a memory. Ice that had lain unmoved since the dawn of another star began to stir. Crystals fractured gently. A slow release of vapor drifted upward, carrying tiny grains of dust with it. The sunlight scattered across these grains, forming a faint glowing veil that stretched behind the object like a whisper of breath. From a distance, that veil shimmered softly, not bright enough to rival the great comets that blaze across our skies, but enough to mark the traveler's passage. The sunlight did not roar upon it, it caressed. Each particle of dust caught the light in a different way, and for a few short weeks, Atlas became visible to eyes that searched carefully enough. It glowed not with fire, but with reflection, turning the sun's warmth into quiet radiance. Through telescopes, the image looked delicate, almost uncertain, as though the comet could dissolve at any moment. Yet in that fragility was strength. It was doing what all things in the universe do when met by warmth. It responded. The scientists who studied it described the event with equations and spectrographs, but behind the data was something gentler. To witness a frozen traveler breathe again after so long was to watch time move in reverse, to see a relic of another world briefly alive under our Sunday. The gases released from its surface carried hints of its origin: frozen carbon, nitrogen, and traces of other elements forged in a star far away. In that rising mist was the chemistry of another sky. It was as if the universe had decided to send us a sample of a story that began somewhere else, long before ours. Each day, as Atlas moved closer to the sun, the glow grew slightly stronger, and with it came the soft exhalation of dust and vapor. The tail lengthened, curving gently as it followed the solar wind. It was not a tale of fire or speed, but one of calm persistence. The heat did not melt it completely. The object was too distant and the encounter too fleeting. Instead, The warmth skimmed its surface, releasing only what was ready to leave. The rest remained locked in ice, still dreaming of the cold. If one could have stood near it, the scene would have been both beautiful and eerie. The sun would have appeared enormous and white against a black sky. The surface beneath your feet would crunch softly under boots, the texture like powdered glass. Every small vibration would travel through your body as though the world itself were humming. The vapor rising from the surface would catch the sunlight and drift outward, each plume glowing briefly before fading into the void. There would be no sound of wind, only the steady pulse of your own breath and the distant, endless quiet of space. This moment of awakening was short. The sun's pull guided Atlas along its curve, and as it began to move away again, the warmth faded. The vapor thinned and froze once more. The tail, once a faint streamer of light, dissolved into invisibility. Within weeks, the glow was gone, and the traveler returned to shadow. But something had changed. Its surface now bore the marks of sunlight, a delicate record of its brief encounter with our star. Cracks in the ice, new patches of dust, perhaps even small jets where vapor once escaped, all of them became part of its story. Scars left not by violence but by touch. And so the traveler continued, carrying a little of our sun's light upon its crust. It left behind no debris, no echo, only the memory of its gentle radiance. It had come close enough to remind us how even the coldest things respond to warmth, how light finds reflection even in silence. For the astronomers who watched, that faint shimmer was enough. It proved that distance is not disconnection. A fragment from another world could cross the gulf, meet our star, and share in its light for a moment before vanishing again into the dark. Now, far beyond the reach of that glow, the sun's warmth is only a faint recollection written in ice. Yet within that frozen stillness, 3i Atlas carries the echo of sunlight, a trace of gold sealed inside the frost. It will drift onward, unchanged in its quiet way, but somewhere deep within its layers, it holds a reminder that it once came alive beneath a star, and for a little while, it shimmered in the light of another world. The path that 3i Atlas took through our solar system was not the kind of path a planet could follow. It was too steep, too fast, and too open. The mathematics that describe it form not a closed circle, but an elegant curve that stretches infinitely outward. It entered our system like a guest walking through an open door and left by another, never turning back. Every world it passed tugged on it gently, trying to bend its motion, but nothing could hold it. The pull of the sun was strong enough to shape its path for a while, to curve it into a brief visit, and then to release it once more into the dark. Its orbit was not an ellipse, but a hyperbola, a shape that never closes, a geometry of farewell. Even before it was visible to the naked eye, scientists understood from its speed that it could not belong here. It was moving faster than anything that had ever been captured by our Sunday. That speed, more than 50 kilometers per second, gave it a kind of freedom that no world within our system could know. Every planet is trapped by gravity, forever falling around the sun in an endless cycle of return. Atlas, by contrast, was untethered. Its path was not bound by repetition. It was a single motion, a one-way crossing through light and shadow, never to repeat. There was something almost serene about the certainty of it. If one could have followed its route across the void, the journey would have looked smooth and deliberate. It moved past the outer planets like a whisper, its presence so faint that it went unnoticed for weeks. Only when it was already heading back outward did we realize it had come and gone. Its angle of approach was steep, cutting through the plane of the planets rather than gliding along it. This difference alone marked it as an outsider. Most of the objects born of our solar system follow the same flattened path, circling like dancers in a single plane. Atlas passed through their stage, as if crossing diagonally through a quiet orbiting crowd. Its velocity kept it beyond the reach of any gravitational capture. Even Jupiter, whose immense gravity has claimed comets and asteroids alike, could not slow it enough to stay. Instead, the giant planet's pull only changed its direction slightly, bending its course without stopping its flight. By the time it had cleared Neptune's orbit, the sun's hold had weakened to the faintest touch. The light that reached it was thin and cold, and from that distance the sun would have appeared as a bright white star no larger than a coin held at arm's length. For Atlas, the journey was already returning to what it had always been, a glide through emptiness. There is something deeply humbling in this idea of freedom. On Earth, we think of motion as progress, as purpose, as direction toward something. But for 3I Atlas, movement simply is. It travels not toward a goal, but because that is its nature. It was cast out of another star system long ago, flung free by forces that have long since faded. Since then, it has done only what all matter does when left alone. It continues. There is no resistance, no friction, no slowing. The same laws that guide planets and moons also guide wanderers, but for those with enough speed, those laws become release instead of captivity. As it moves farther from our sun, the forces that shaped its trajectory grow faint until they vanish entirely. The hyperbolic path that carried it through our sky now carries it into the unseen. It will continue outward for millions of years, passing between the faint gravitational fields of stars, its course altered only by the gentlest of pulls. One day, perhaps, it will drift near another star and repeat this dance, a brief curve toward warmth, a brush with light, and then another departure. The beauty of that motion lies in its simplicity. It is not rebellion or escape, it is continuation. Atlas does not resist gravity, it follows it precisely, just with enough energy to never stop. Its path is the universe expressed as movement, an unbroken story written in silence. If we could see it now, it would look no different than before, a small shadow against the endless dark, but knowing its trajectory gives it meaning. It reminds us that the cosmos is not a static place, but a flowing river of motion, where even the smallest traveler can trace a line that never ends. So it moves onward, carrying nothing but the memory of its brief time among our worlds. The sun's light fades behind it, and the stars ahead wait patiently, scattered across the horizon of forever. The path it follows cannot be measured by destination or return. It is the geometry of freedom, the quiet continuation of existence unbound. And somewhere in that endless arc, there is peace, a perfect stillness in motion that asks for nothing more than to keep drifting among the stars. When astronomers first calculated the orbit of 3I Atlas, they realized it could not have been born under the influence of our Sunday. The shape of its path, the speed of its approach, and the angle at which it entered the solar system all spoke of a different origin. It had arrived from beyond, from the wide, unbounded regions between stars where light itself grows faint. To know that something had traveled such a distance was to glimpse the scale of the galaxy in a single, quiet object. The evidence of its foreign birth was written not just in its movement but in its very substance, a mixture of ices and minerals that did not quite match the patterns familiar to our solar system's chemistry. Every measurement confirmed the same conclusion. This small traveler was not one of ours. The way scientists discern such things is subtle. They study the light that reflects from an object and separate it into its colors, each wavelength revealing what elements lie within. In the spectrum of Atlas, the signatures were slightly off, the chemical fingerprints arranged in ways that hinted at a different story of creation. The ratios of carbon to oxygen, the faint traces of exotic compounds frozen within its crust, all suggested it had formed in the cold outskirts of another star's planetary nursery. Long ago, perhaps billions of years earlier, that nursery had been filled with countless young worlds in the making, colliding, fusing, breaking apart. In the chaos of that formation, Atlas might have been flung away, hurled into interstellar space by the gravity of a passing giant. From then on, it drifted between suns, carrying within it the preserved record of its origin. The realization of its alien nature filled those who studied it with quiet wonder. To hold a piece of another solar system, even through the distance of a telescope, felt like opening a window into the unknown. It meant that the materials that built other stars and planets were not confined to their birthplaces. The galaxy shares itself, scattering fragments from one system to another, weaving its story across light years. Atlas was a messenger of that grand exchange, proof that what happens in one corner of the galaxy can reach another in time. Its presence reminded us that the boundaries we imagine between stars are illusions, that even the most distant worlds participate in a shared cosmic continuity. As the data grew clearer, the evidence became impossible to deny. Its velocity exceeded the escape speed of the sun by a wide margin. Its path did not trace the plane of the planets but crossed it at an oblique angle, cutting through like a thread through cloth. It moved as if following its own rules, untouched by the pattern of our solar family. And yet, despite being foreign, it behaved exactly as physics said it should, obeying the same gravity, reflecting the same light, bowing gently to the same sun before continuing on. It was both other and familiar, an echo of somewhere else moving through a system that recognized it immediately. There is something profoundly human in our response to such discoveries. We find comfort in the idea of belonging, of naming what is ours. But Atlas asked us to look beyond that, to see that even in the vastness of the galaxy, there is no true separation. Its motion was proof of that. It had once circled another sun, had perhaps watched other planets grow, and now it carried those distant stories into our sky. The same laws that shaped it shaped us. The same starlight that touched it now warms our own world. To realize this is to understand that nothing in the universe exists in isolation. If we could trace its journey backward, we might find a star faint and quiet, perhaps surrounded by dust and forgotten fragments of creation. Around that star, a small disk of icy worlds might still drift, the siblings that Atlas left behind. Somewhere in that region, a planet may look up at its own night sky and wonder about the tiny fragments that once escaped. And in that wondering, there would be a symmetry. For as we gaze at Atlas, trying to imagine where it came from, perhaps someone, somewhere, beneath another sun, wonders where their lost fragments have gone. This is what the study of such a visitor reveals. It teaches us that the galaxy is not a collection of lonely stars, but a single, breathing entity connected by these quiet travelers. They are its memories, moving patiently between systems, linking one era of creation to the next. In that sense, 3i Atlas is not a stranger at all. It is a reminder of unity, a small, silent piece of the same story. We all belong to a story written in the language of gravity and light, carried softly on the currents of time. Long before 3i Atlas crossed our sky, it began its journey somewhere in the distant reaches of another star's domain. The story of its making would have been familiar, even if it happened light years away. Around a young sun, dust and ice drifted in a great swirling disk. Over time, those particles began to gather, sticking together through the faint pull of static and gravity, growing slowly from grains into pebbles, from pebbles into stones, and from stones into small worlds. It was within that quiet collision of matter that Atlas must have taken shape. Perhaps it was once part of a larger body, a moon or fragment of a forming planet, caught up in the chaotic ballet that all solar systems experience in their youth. In that young system, everything would have been in motion. Planets were still finding their paths, asteroids were crashing into one another, and new moons were being born. The space around that ancient sun would have been filled with the raw ingredients of creation. Then, something happened to send Atlas away. Maybe a collision shattered a larger object, flinging pieces outward into unstable orbits. Maybe the gravitational pull of a giant planet gave one of those fragments the extra push it needed to escape entirely. Whatever the cause, that small piece of rock and ice began to drift outward, leaving behind the warmth of its star and all the worlds that had been its home. It crossed the border of its own system and entered the dark gulf between the stars. The distance between one sun and the next is so vast that even light takes years to cross it. For Atlas, the journey would have taken millions, perhaps billions of years. During that time, it would have experienced nothing that we could call change. There is no wind in interstellar space, no friction to slow a traveler down, no collision to disturb its sleep. Its surface, once marked by the fires of formation, became still. Radiation from distant stars may have darkened its outer layers, and cosmic rays may have rearranged its molecules, but the shape of the object remained the same. It carried with it the memory of its origin, frozen in ice and stone. When it finally neared our solar system, it would have done so without awareness, guided only by gravity's patient pull. The sun, vast yet gentle at such distances, reached out and began to bend its path. The warmth grew by degrees, so faint at first that nothing changed, but slowly, as it drew closer, that light began to wake its surface. In those moments, when Atlas was touched by sunlight for the first time in ages, it may have looked almost alive again. A thin layer of frost would have vaporized, a faint mist forming a small halo that drifted behind it. For a little while, the traveler that had slept between the stars breathed once more, and that breath reached us as a faint glow through our telescopes. The idea that such a small object could survive a journey so long is a quiet miracle. It has crossed spaces so empty that we have no words to describe them, enduring a kind of solitude that defies imagination. And yet, even in that solitude, it was never truly alone. It was shaped by the same forces that shape all worlds, carried by the same physics that keeps the stars burning and the planets turning. It was made of the same atoms that make up our oceans and our air, atoms born in the hearts of ancient stars and scattered across the galaxy long before our sun existed. 3I Atlas is not simply a wanderer, it is a messenger from that earlier time. It carries proof that the universe does not stay still, that even the smallest fragments are part of a grand circulation of matter and memory. The same dust that once formed Atlas may one day be drawn into a new system, perhaps melted and reshaped into another world, perhaps even into another being that looks up at the stars and wonders where it came from. In that way, its journey is not just motion, it is continuity. Somewhere in its frozen heart are traces of ancient chemistry, molecules forged under another star's light. Those molecules now drift within our galaxy, their origin and destination lost to time, but their presence reminding us that creation never ends. The universe is not a series of beginnings and endings. It is one vast, unfolding story, told through the movement of objects like Atlas. Its path across our sky was a single sentence in that story, written in the quietest of voices, yet carrying within it the echoes of everything that ever was. And now, as it continues outward once more, it carries with it the next chapter, unwritten but already underway. Every interstellar traveler is a kind of message. It does not speak or carry words, yet in its movement and its silence, it tells a story that no language could capture. When 3I Atlas passed through our solar system, it brought with it the faintest trace of another sun, another age, another place where matter once gathered and came alive. To think of it this way is to understand that the universe itself is always in conversation, not through sound, but through the slow exchange of light and gravity and motion. Atlas is a single syllable in that conversation, drifting from one star to the next, whispering its history without ever knowing that it does. Its message began long ago when its parent star formed from a collapsing cloud of gas. In the chaos of that beginning, countless fragments spun outward. Some would grow into planets and moons, others into rings and comets, and some, like Atlas, would be cast away entirely. Yet each of them carried a record of that moment in their composition, the particular balance of carbon, oxygen, iron, and ice that marked the place of their birth. When Atlas was ejected into interstellar space, that record was sealed within it like an ancient letter, written by a hand that never knew it was writing. For millions of years, it drifted, unchanging, until at last its course intersected ours. When we first noticed it, we had no way of knowing what it contained. We could only measure its brightness, its speed, and the way sunlight reflected from its surface. But even those simple facts told us something extraordinary. They told us that our solar system was not an island. They told us that objects could pass from one star to another, carrying the chemistry of foreign worlds across the galaxy. In that realization, the silence of space began to feel less empty. The distances between stars, which had always seemed like barriers, suddenly seemed like bridges. Atlas was proof that material could travel those impossible expanses, that the boundaries of systems were not walls but gentle gradients of motion. There is another way to read its message, one that speaks not of data but of meaning. To exist at all is to participate in the unfolding of the cosmos, and Atlas, in its quiet way, embodies that truth. It is made of the same materials that make up every world, every moon, and every living thing. The hydrogen in its ice and the carbon in its dust were forged in ancient stars that burned long before our Sunday. Those atoms have traveled through time, forming and reforming, joining and separating, endlessly shared among the stars. When we look at Atlas, we are seeing ourselves in another form, a reminder that everything in existence, no matter how distant or small, comes from the same origin. If one could imagine it as a kind of messenger, then what it brings is not news from elsewhere, but a reflection of what we already know deep within us. It tells us that nothing is truly separate. The same forces that send planets into orbit also send wanderers into the dark. The same gravity that holds us to our Earth carries Atlas across the stars. The same starlight that warms our world touches it for a moment before letting it go. Its journey is our story, stretched across a wider canvas, written in slower, grander strokes. When its faint light faded from our telescopes, it was not lost. It had simply continued the sentence it began long ago, the one that will continue to be written for as long as the galaxy endures. Somewhere far ahead, it will pass near another star, and the warmth of that light will wake its surface again. A new tail of vapor will form, and it will shine briefly, sending another message outward. Perhaps, on a distant world, beings we will never meet will look up and see it as we did. They will measure its path and wonder where it came from. They will see what we saw, a small, silent object moving between stars, bearing the history of another place. In that moment, the story will continue, and the conversation will carry on. Atlas will have linked two civilizations that will never meet, two suns that will never touch, and two moments separated by eons. It will not know what it has done, but the act itself will be enough. That is the way of the cosmos. Its messages are not sent with intention, but they arrive all the same, carried by the slow grace of motion and the enduring patience of time. 3i Atlas is one such message, a small fragment of meaning drifting through the great stillness, reminding us that even in the vast dark, the universe is always speaking, and we are always listening. Once 3i Atlas slipped past the sun and into the deep dark again, its path became a story of distance rather than light. Every second carried it farther from our world, its motion steady and sure, guided only by the faintest whispers of gravity. The pull of the sun grew weaker with each passing day, until it was no stronger than the tug of any other star. Beyond that point, the boundaries of our solar system ceased to mean anything. There were no lines, no borders, only a slow fading of warmth and brightness as the traveler returned to the vast ocean from which it had come. The journey it continues now will last longer than our lifetimes, longer than the span of human civilization, perhaps longer than the life of our own Sunday. It moves through the galaxy as if through an endless night, untouched by decay, unhurried by time. Out there, the distances are so immense that even light itself feels slow. Stars that seem close together from Earth are in truth separated by gulfs that could swallow thousands of solar systems. Atlas moves through those gulfs quietly, without company, its course unbroken and its shape unchanged. If we could somehow follow it, we would see the light of our sun shrink behind us until it became no more than a pinprick. The planets would vanish one by one, then the stars of the familiar constellations would begin to shift. The galaxy is not still. Its stars drift like slow rivers, carrying their planets and comets along paths shaped by invisible tides. Atlas is caught in that movement now. It will pass through the galactic currents, crossing arms of dust and starlight, drifting through spaces where clouds of gas glow faintly in the dark. Occasionally, the faint pull of a nearby star might bend its path ever so slightly, adding a new curve to its long and silent flight. Perhaps, far in the future, it will wander close to another solar system. The pull of that distant star will begin to guide it in, and once again it will awaken. Its frozen surface will warm, its ices will exhale a thin mist, and for a brief time it will shine again, a faint glimmer moving through another sky. It will not stay there either. The same forces that led it to that light will send it back out into the dark. Each passage from one system to another is part of a greater cycle, the slow migration of matter across the galaxy. In this way, Atlas will carry its tiny record of existence from one star to the next, crossing centuries and civilizations, a quiet messenger of motion. The scale of its voyage defies imagination. In 1,000,000 years, it may have only crossed a small corner of the galaxy. In a billion, it might have reached another cluster of suns, joining the faint drift of icy bodies that circle their distant worlds. It may be captured for a while, orbiting another star for a few thousand years before finding its freedom again. Or it may travel forever, never touching another system, content in its endless wandering. In every possibility lies a kind of peace. To think of such timescales can make human life feel fragile. Our stories unfold in moments compared to its centuries. And yet, there is something comforting in that contrast. We are part of the same motion that carries it. The atoms in our bodies, the dust beneath our feet, all began as travelers once, born in the hearts of stars and cast outward through space. Like Atlas, they found new homes and became something different. One day, long after we are gone, they will continue on their own journeys, drifting once more through the quiet dark. 3I Atlas will go farther still, crossing regions of the galaxy we will never see. It will move through clouds of interstellar gas, past clusters of ancient stars, and into the open spaces between galactic arms. Perhaps one day, long after our sun has faded, it will pass near a world that looks up and wonders at it just as we once did. For a moment, it will belong to them as it once belonged to us. Then, as always, it will continue on, carrying with it the same story of motion, endurance, and the quiet beauty of distance. In the end, the question of where it is going has no single answer. Its destination is the journey itself. It will move until the galaxy changes, until stars rise and die, until time loses its meaning. And in that unending motion lies the essence of the universe, a vast, quiet persistence that asks for nothing and gives everything. 3I Atlas is one small reflection of that truth, a piece of the cosmos continuing its long, graceful drift into forever. There is a question that lingers in the minds of many who look at travelers like 3I Atlas. Could something so small and quiet carry more than just rock and ice? Could it, in some hidden way, carry the beginnings of life? The idea may sound poetic, yet it is rooted in science as much as imagination. Across the galaxy, the same elements that form our oceans and our breath also exist in the frozen hearts of comets. Hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, all locked in ice, waiting for warmth to awaken them. If Atlas carries even a trace of those building blocks, then it carries the potential that has shaped every living thing we know. Scientists call the possibility of life spreading between worlds panspermia. It is the idea that microscopic seeds might survive the long journeys between stars, traveling within fragments of rock and ice, dormant for ages until finding a new home. Perhaps the story of life did not begin only on one world. Perhaps it has been drifting through space all along, waiting for the right place to bloom. Atlas, like many interstellar wanderers, may be one of those seeds, not in a deliberate way, but as part of the natural sharing of matter that has always connected the stars. If we could break open its frozen surface and look deep within, we might find traces of chemistry both familiar and strange. There could be complex molecules hidden in the dark layers beneath the outer crust, remnants of reactions that took place under the light of another Sunday. Those molecules might resemble the organic compounds found in the comets of our own solar system, molecules that, when warmed and stirred, could have sparked the first living cells on Earth. In that sense, Atlas and others like it are carriers of possibility. They hold within them the silent ingredients of creation, preserved across the cold ages of space. The thought that life's origins might not be confined to one planet changes how we see everything. It suggests that the galaxy itself is fertile, that the same patterns repeat in countless places, guided by the same simple laws of chemistry and time. If 3I Atlas ever were to pass close to a young world covered in water and clouds, a world still finding its balance between chaos and calm, perhaps some of those molecules could fall from its surface and join the soil or the sea. They might settle there quietly, unnoticed at first, until warmth and sunlight awaken them. From that moment onward, a new story could begin. A story not of the comet, but of the world it visited. It is impossible to know if such events have ever truly happened, yet the idea feels comforting. It turns the coldness of space into something nurturing, a place not of emptiness but of exchange. Even the most distant objects may contribute to the quiet spread of life's potential, linking worlds we will never see. The act does not require intention. It happens naturally, as dust drifts and particles mingle. The universe does not need to plan in order to create. It simply moves, and through that motion, it shares itself. In the soft darkness beyond the sun, Atlas continues its journey, carrying whatever secrets it holds within its frozen shell. Perhaps those secrets are lifeless, mere combinations of atoms frozen into stillness. But even so, they are made of the same materials that, under the right conditions, can dance into life. It is a reminder that life is not separate from the rest of the cosmos. It is an expression of it, a natural continuation of the same forces that form stars and comets and clouds of dust. When we look at Atlas, we see more than an interstellar object. We see a possibility in motion. It drifts through the galaxy as a symbol of connection, carrying within it the potential that unites every world, every creature, every thought. Life, like light, may not stay in one place. It spreads quietly, gently, across the infinite dark, carried by wanderers like this one. Whether or not Atlas ever delivers its cargo of chemistry to a waiting world, it continues to remind us that existence itself is fertile, that the universe does not end at the boundaries of our sky, and that within the silence between the stars, creation still moves endlessly, patiently, and full of wonder. Out in the depths between the stars, time loses its meaning. It stretches and folds until moments blur into eras. For 3I Atlas, time moves so gently that change itself becomes almost imaginary. Nothing around it shifts fast enough to measure. The stars it passes drift only slightly from one century to the next. The light that touches it arrives from suns that may already have died, and the darkness it travels through is so complete that it feels like a kind of stillness. Yet this stillness is not an ending. It is motion so steady that it becomes peace. The traveler continues forward without effort, its path smooth and certain, its existence shaped by patience alone. If one could watch its journey unfold in slow motion, it would look like a dream suspended in glass. Each rotation would be a slow turn, each mile a soft glide through nothingness. It is difficult for human minds to grasp such slowness. On Earth, everything changes so quickly. Winds move, oceans rise, stars set, and seasons pass in cycles that give shape to our lives. But in the space where Atlas drifts, there are no seasons. There is no morning, no evening, no measure of passing days. There is only the gentle rhythm of endless travel. Its frozen surface holds the memory of sunlight, though the sun itself is now nothing more than a faint glimmer behind it. The warmth that once reached across the void has vanished, leaving behind a crust of ancient frost that glows faintly when struck by the light of distant stars. That faint light will be all that touches it for ages to come. It will not fade completely, but it will never brighten again. The traveler moves farther into the cold, carrying the quiet comfort of solitude. In a way, its slowness is not a lack of motion but a kind of eternity. Every second of its journey is perfectly balanced. It neither stops nor accelerates. It moves because the universe itself moves, because everything that exists must continue forward in some form. Its direction may change slightly as it feels the pull of other stars, but the continuity of its path will never break. Over millions of years, it will cross through regions of space shaped by invisible forces. Gravity will bend its trajectory in gentle curves. Starlight will fade, then reappear from different angles. It will never pause, and it will never arrive, because for objects like Atlas, arrival is only an illusion. There are no destinations in infinity, only motion through it. To imagine that kind of journey is to touch something deeper than time itself. On Earth, we measure our lives by beginnings and endings, by arrivals and departures, by the ticking of clocks and the changing of light. But in the slow realm of interstellar travel, there is no such rhythm. The clock of the universe runs differently there. The seconds are stretched so wide that each one feels like a lifetime. What we call a moment becomes vast enough to hold entire histories. Perhaps that is what makes Atlas such a calming thought. It is a reminder that existence does not need urgency. It does not need purpose to continue. The universe moves at every scale, from the beating of a heart to the rotation of a galaxy, and each movement is part of the same great pattern. Atlas drifts within that pattern without resistance, carried by the same laws that guide us, though it moves through a longer silence than we will ever know. There is a quiet wisdom in its endless patience. It shows that time is not something to chase or conquer. Time simply is. To drift through it without hurry, to let it pass like a soft wind rather than a force to fight against, is to understand what it means to belong to the cosmos. 3. Atlas belongs completely. It has no fear of what lies ahead, no memory of what lies behind. It simply continues, turning slowly through the darkness, timeless and untroubled, an eternal traveler wrapped in the stillness of space. And perhaps, in imagining that slowness, we learn to find a small piece of that same calm within ourselves, to breathe a little deeper, to let the world quiet, and to feel, just for a moment, how it might be to drift peacefully forever beneath a sky full of stars. The cold of space is not harsh the way winter feels on Earth. It is softer, quieter, more complete. It is the kind of cold that does not sting or burn but simply exists, waiting with infinite patience. Around 3i Atlas, that cold has become its constant companion. It has wrapped the traveler in layers of stillness, preserving everything it touches. The molecules within its frozen surface barely move, their energy slowed almost to nothing. In that near motionless state, every detail of the comet's history has been sealed in place. Each layer of ice holds the memory of a star long gone, the trace of collisions, the residue of light from ages past. To drift through such cold is not to decay but to endure. The cold does not destroy in the way heat does. Heat breaks, burns, and transforms. Cold, in its vastness, keeps. It pauses what would otherwise crumble. On Earth, we preserve what we wish to keep by freezing it. The same truth holds for the cosmos. Space is a vault of ice, and inside that vault, travelers like Atlas become time capsules. They do not fade, they wait. They carry the history of the galaxy in the form of frozen chemistry, a map of creation hidden within every crystal and grain of dust. If one could touch its surface, it would feel like ancient stone covered in frost. Underneath that thin layer of powder lies the same material that existed when the galaxy was young. Each atom of oxygen and carbon has survived the rise and fall of countless stars. The cold has kept them bound together, preserving their structure so precisely that even the smallest details remain unchanged. Within that icy crust may rest clues to the composition of the world it once called home. There could be traces of its original sun's light, locked into the minerals that formed in its warmth before it was flung away. There might even be particles from other travelers it has brushed against during its journey through interstellar space. The preservation is so perfect that it feels like a form of memory. It is not a conscious one, not the memory of thought, but the memory of matter. Every molecule in Atlas remembers where it has been. It remembers the light that once touched it, the pressure that once shaped it, the cold that has kept it still. These memories are written not in words but in patterns, arrangements of atoms and bonds, silent but enduring. For scientists, this makes it more than just a visitor from beyond. It is a record keeper, a frozen archive of the universe's earliest moments. The quiet preservation of such objects reminds us that the universe is not rushing toward oblivion. It is keeping everything, even the smallest fragments, in its vast embrace. Atlas is a piece of that keeping, a reminder that time and space moves differently than it does for us. What we call ancient might be young to the stars, and what we think of as fleeting might last longer than entire civilizations. The cold gives permanence to what would otherwise vanish. It slows everything until even change itself seems to sleep. There is something beautiful in the idea that the cold of space does not destroy but protects. It allows things like Atlas to carry their stories unbroken through billions of years. Somewhere beneath its surface, the chemical fingerprints of another world still rest, unaltered since the day they formed. Those fingerprints are messages in their own right, left for any who might one day find them. They tell of a time when dust gathered around a new star, when warmth and motion gave birth to shape, and when that shape was set free to wander. As 3I Atlas moves farther into the void, the temperature around it will drop even more, but it will not feel colder. It has already reached a kind of perfect balance with its surroundings. Its surface no longer loses or gains heat. It is as cold as the universe itself, and in that harmony, it will remain preserved indefinitely. The ice will not melt, the rock will not crumble, and the silence will continue. It will drift onward, carrying its frozen record until another light finds it, perhaps millions of years from now. Then, for a moment, the cold will give way to warmth, and the story sealed within it will awaken again, shining faintly before returning once more to sleep. The cold, then, is not emptiness. It is a guardian. It holds everything still enough for the universe to remember itself, and within that stillness, 3I Atlas continues its journey, not as a relic, but as a keeper of time. It is the galaxy's way of saving what it has made, of ensuring that even across endless silence, nothing that ever was is truly lost. If motion could make sound in the vacuum of space, 3I Atlas would hum with the lowest and softest of notes. It would not be a song that the ear could hear, but one that the mind could almost feel, like the vibration of thought or the rhythm of a heartbeat slowed beyond measure. Every movement through the dark, every rotation, every faint pull of gravity adds to that silent music. The universe is full of such songs, though they are quieter than anything we could ever record. They live in the way things move, the way light travels, and the way gravity shapes the paths of stars. Atlas drifts within that music perfectly in tune, another note in the eternal composition of the cosmos. To imagine its sound is to imagine time slowed to a crawl. The deep, steady hum of its motion would have no beginning and no end. It would flow like a tide too vast to rise or fall. Even now, as it glides beyond the reach of our sun, it continues that unseen symphony. The vibrations of its rotation, the gentle tug of distant stars, and the faint energy of passing cosmic rays all weave together into a rhythm that stretches across space. It is not random. It is order expressed through motion, harmony written into gravity itself. If a person could somehow translate the patterns of its orbit into sound, the melody would not be hurried or bright. It would be long and resonant, as calm as a lullaby played by the universe to itself. The low frequencies of its rotation would blend with the slow changes in its distance from the stars, creating a harmony that moves so gradually that even millions of years would form only a few measures of the song. Perhaps this is what eternity sounds like, not silence but music, so vast and patient that it seems still. Every object in the galaxy contributes its own note to this cosmic chorus. The stars vibrate faintly in their cores, sending waves through their outer layers that ripple across light years. Planets orbit with perfect rhythm, moons echo their movements, and comets like Atlas glide between them, their paths overlapping like counterpoint in a grand composition. The galaxy, when thought of this way, is not chaos, but a kind of orchestral stillness, where every motion balances another, where every beat connects to something else. 3I Atlas, in its simplicity, embodies that harmony. It does not rush or falter. Its motion is pure and unbroken, guided only by the invisible hands of gravity. The song it creates is not made of sound waves, but of persistence. Each orbit, each drift, each reflection of starlight is a continuation of that same quiet rhythm. It plays the same note endlessly, the note of existence, the one that underlies everything. Sometimes, when we listen to the wind or the sea, we sense something similar, a reminder of motion larger than ourselves. Those sounds are fleeting echoes of the same law that governs Atlas's journey. The rhythm of waves crashing on a shore is the rhythm of gravity expressed through water and air. The whisper of leaves in a forest is another reflection of that same cosmic movement. In every small sound of nature, the universe repeats itself, speaking in tones of balance and continuation. If we could stand near Atlas and somehow hear the song of its movement, it would not be lonely. It would feel like standing inside the heart of a great, endless harmony, one where silence is only another kind of music. The faint hum of its rotation would blend with the pulse of the galaxy itself, the slow breathing of stars and the long sigh of drifting dust. The tune would not change when we left. It would continue forever, unaffected, waiting for new listeners in another age. That is the music of the cosmos, the melody of motion without rest, the rhythm of persistence through time. 3. Atlas moves within it like a single note, but every note matters. Without even one, the song would be incomplete. It reminds us that even in our quietest moments, when we feel most still, we are part of that same music. We, too, are moving, turning, circling within it. The atoms that make us were once part of other stars, and one day they will drift again, adding their tones to the endless sound. Atlas simply reminds us that the song goes on, that the silence of space is not empty but full, and that everything, everywhere, moves in perfect time with the universe's own slow, steady beat. Somewhere far ahead in the great sweep of the galaxy, 3I Atlas will cross paths with another star. It will not happen soon, not in any measure of time we understand, but it is inevitable. The galaxy turns like a vast wheel, carrying suns and worlds through space, and as it turns, paths that once seemed separate slowly converge. Perhaps in a few million years, perhaps in 10 or 50, Atlas will drift near another sun, faint at first, then brighter, until that new light brushes against its surface just as ours once did. The warmth will touch it gently, awakening the layers of ice that have slept for ages. The cold that has kept it still will begin to loosen, and a soft breath of vapor will rise again, curling into a faint tail of light. For the second time in its long existence, Atlas will glow. From that distant world, if there are eyes to see, it will appear as a tiny moving star, crossing the darkness with calm precision. Its glow will be pale, perhaps golden, perhaps blue, depending on the hue of the new Sunday. It will seem no more significant than any other comet, a simple wanderer paying a brief visit to that system's edge. Yet for those who notice it, the sight will stir something familiar, the same quiet wonder that it brought to us. They will measure its orbit, chart its speed, and realize that it does not belong. They will see the same story written in its motion, an interstellar traveler, a guest from another world. They might call it by a new name, one that reflects their language and their myths. They might not know that we once saw it too, that our sun once cast light upon it in the same way. Yet that moment of connection will exist all the same, a shared chapter written across epochs. Through Atlas, our two civilizations, ours gone to history by then, theirs perhaps still beginning, will be linked by light alone. The same object that once drifted through our solar system will now pass through theirs, carrying within it traces of both encounters. The sunlight of our star will still be locked within its dust, and the warmth of their sun will soon join it. The traveler will continue onward, collecting these touches of light like memories, carrying them from one corner of the galaxy to another. It is a humbling thought that an object no larger than a mountain could become a bridge between stars. Through its journey, entire eras will pass. Stars will be born and die. Galaxies will shift their shapes, and still Atlas will travel, unchanged in purpose but always gathering more of the universe's quiet story. Each encounter, each brush with light, will leave something behind, an invisible thread connecting one world to another. The stars themselves are too far apart to speak directly, but their messengers, these small, icy wanderers, carry their whispers through the dark. Even if it never reaches another inhabited world, its motion will not be wasted. The dust it sheds near that distant sun will settle into orbits, becoming part of that system's fabric. Some grains may fall onto a planet's surface, dissolving in the thin air, mingling with water or soil. The chemistry within them might interact with what is already there, adding something new, something small but significant. It is the quiet work of the universe, the slow weaving of connection through countless tiny acts. When Atlas finally moves on, it will take the light of that new sun with it, reflecting its glow for a while before letting it fade into memory. Its surface will bear the marks of another meeting, faint lines carved by heat and dust, the signatures of another solar system etched upon its face. Then it will slip once again into the long dark, carrying both the warmth it received and the shadows it left behind. The beauty of this journey lies in its continuity. Every world it passes becomes part of its story. Every light it reflects becomes a fragment of its song. It may never rest, but in its endless movement lies a kind of belonging. To travel forever is to be part of everything. The galaxy is not a collection of separate places. It is one great connected expanse, and travelers like Atlas remind us of that unity. So it will keep moving, through darkness and light, from one sun to another, across distances that erase even the memory of time. It will shine again, faint but certain, and somewhere, far away, someone will look up and wonder what it is, never knowing that it once passed through our own sky. In that wonder, the story will begin anew, and the traveler's journey will continue, linking another world to ours through the quiet, enduring language of motion and light. When we look at something like 3I Atlas, what we see is not just a piece of rock and ice but a reflection of ourselves. Its passage through our solar system is brief, and yet it lingers in memory because it reminds us of our own wandering. We, too, are travelers in a universe far larger than we can comprehend, circling a small star in a galaxy that moves endlessly through the dark. In the movement of Atlas, we find the same rhythm that guides our own existence. It drifts onward through the stars with quiet certainty, just as we move through the years, shaped by forces larger than we can see. Its journey becomes a mirror of our own, one that asks us to pause and consider where we are and how we belong to the vastness around us. There is a kind of humility in realizing that the same physics that governs this interstellar traveler also governs us. The gravity that steers its path through space holds our feet to the ground. The sunlight that glinted off its surface is the same light that warms our skin and stirs the oceans. The atoms that make up its frozen crust are kin to the atoms that make up our bodies. We are not observers standing apart from the cosmos. We are participants in its motion. Atlas simply moves at a different pace, on a different path, but under the same rules that have shaped everything since the beginning of time. Its silence is another lesson. In that quiet drift lies a peace we often forget exists. The comet does not hurry, does not strive, does not resist. It accepts its course completely. To imagine its journey is to imagine surrender to the flow of existence itself. It carries no awareness of where it has been or where it is going, yet its motion is perfect. In its unthinking grace, it embodies a truth that humanity has always sought, that to be part of the universe is enough, that one does not have to fight to belong to it. There is also comfort in the idea that something so small, so seemingly insignificant, can still connect worlds. Atlas has touched the light of our sun, and long after we are gone, it will touch the light of others. Through it, our star's glow will travel farther than any ship we could build, scattered across the galaxy as a faint reflection. It will carry the memory of our system, not because it means to, but because every act of existence leaves a trace. In this way, the comet becomes a kind of envoy for our world, bearing no message, only presence. Its very being is a reminder that to exist is to participate in the endless exchange of light and matter that binds all things together. When astronomers watch it fade into the distance, they do not only measure its speed or its orbit, they watch the slow unfolding of perspective. Each departing interstellar object expands the boundaries of what we know, not by revealing new places, but by reminding us that the familiar is not the whole story. We are one small corner of something greater. Atlas is another corner, moving through the same sea of stars, unseen but connected. That connection is not one of distance but of belonging. Every planet, every comet, every drifting atom participates in the same quiet dance. It is easy to think of ourselves as fragile in comparison to something that endures for millions of years. Yet our fragility is also part of the same pattern. The lives we live, short and bright, mirror the flashes of sunlight that briefly illuminated the comet as it passed. Both moments are fleeting, but both are real. The comet continues onward into the dark, and we continue onward into our own tomorrows, each of us carrying the memory of light. In that way, we and Atlas share a kind of kinship. We are both part of the story of the cosmos, both made of the same ancient dust, both moving through time with no need to control where it leads. So when we think of where it is going, we might also think of ourselves. The traveler reminds us that motion never truly ends, that even after it leaves our sky, its journey and ours are not separate. We are bound by the same unfolding of existence, the same quiet, endless drift through the universe. And as 3I Atlas continues its soft flight into the unknown, it carries with it the reflection of our curiosity, our wonder, and our shared place in the great continuity of creation. In its motion, we see the simplest and most beautiful truth of all, that everything, from the smallest grain of dust to the most distant star, moves together through the same vast and gentle night. Nothing in the universe stays still. Even when all seems silent and unmoving, everything is in motion. Stars drift slowly through the spiral arms of the galaxy, planets circle their suns, and clouds of dust stretch and twist like soft smoke across the night. The same is true for the smallest things, for atoms and photons, for the particles that dance unseen between worlds. 3I Atlas is one expression of that endless movement, a quiet traveler that carries within it the reminder that stillness is only another form of motion waiting to be felt. Its journey is not unique, yet it feels deeply personal to those who have followed it, because in its slow passage through the dark, we see the truth of everything, that all matter, all light, all lives are part of the same unfolding rhythm. When it first entered our sky, it moved so slowly that its progress could not be seen with the eye. Days passed, and its position changed only by a degree or two, yet beneath that calm surface was incredible speed. It crossed millions of kilometers each hour, slipping effortlessly through the gravity of the sun and the invisible fields that fill the solar system. Its grace came not from stillness but from the harmony of its motion. It followed the same laws that hold everything together, the same invisible threads that bind the galaxy in its long rotation. To the universe, 3I Atlas was not foreign or strange. It was part of the pattern, a line drawn through space with perfect precision. Now it continues onward, leaving behind the thin boundary of our sun's domain. The light that once reflected from its icy crust is still traveling, spreading outward through the galaxy. Those photons carry the image of our world, the touch of our star, and the quiet record of its passing. Long after the comet itself has moved far beyond our reach, that light will still move, carrying the faintest memory of a moment when paths crossed. The universe keeps these exchanges alive in ways we cannot measure. Every meeting, every reflection, every motion leaves something behind. The journey of Atlas is not an isolated act. It is part of the greater continuity that joins everything together. Its motion will never cease. Even if one day it drifts into the gravitational reach of another star, that capture will only transform its path into a new kind of movement. It might circle for a time, shining briefly once more, and then be cast out again, continuing the slow migration of matter across the galaxy. The atoms that form its surface will one day be scattered by collisions, or heat, or age. They will mix with the dust between stars, and those same atoms will eventually be drawn together into something new. Perhaps they will become part of another comet, or part of a planet, or even part of a living being that looks up at the sky and wonders where it came from. The same process is happening everywhere, all the time. Nothing is ever truly lost. It only changes shape. The galaxies turn, the stars burn and fade, and their remnants become the seeds of new creation. Atlas is not separate from that cycle. It is a single note in the endless song of renewal. Its motion is the melody of time itself, slow and constant and filled with purpose that requires no awareness. To drift is to belong. To move is to exist. For us, watching from our small blue world, there is comfort in knowing that the universe never stops. It means that even when our own lives seem still or uncertain, we are part of something that continues without end. Every heartbeat, every breath, every quiet thought joins in the same movement that carries 3i Atlas across the stars. The traveler will go on, and so will we, in ways large and small, visible and invisible. Far ahead, the galaxy will keep turning, and Atlas will glide within it, calm and unbroken. The stars will rise and vanish, and still it will move, carrying with it the same soft truth that has guided it since the beginning. That everything changes, that everything continues, and that within that continuation lies peace. The universe does not hurry. It only moves, endlessly and beautifully, and in that motion there is both creation and rest. 3i Atlas is one of its quiet reminders, a whisper of forever, gliding through the dark, teaching us that even in silence, everything is alive. So, as 3i Atlas drifts back into the deep, leaving our sun behind, we can take comfort in knowing it will keep going calmly, endlessly, carrying the memory of our encounter like a faint reflection on ice. Somewhere far ahead, it will pass another star, unnoticed, still moving, still whole. Its journey reminds us that everything, even the smallest fragment, belongs to a greater motion. As you close your eyes tonight, may your thoughts travel just as gently free, unbound, and softly lit by distant starlight. Sleep well, traveler.